Hello, and welcome to Consumer Connections. Today we have Commissioner Brendan Carr, who will discuss 5G wireless services. I'm your host for today, Keyla Hernandez-Ulloa with the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. Commissioner Carr was nominated to serve as Commissioner of the FCC and was confirmed unanimously by the United States Senate on August 3, 2017. He was sworn into office on August 11, 2017. Commissioner Carr brings to the position over a dozen years of public and private sector experience in technology and communications law and policy. Welcome, Commissioner Carr.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, we'll begin straight with the questions. There's a lot of talk lately about the United States positioning itself to win the 5G race. It is said that it should foster greater connectivity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. But before we continue our discussion, what are 5G wireless services?
Yeah, we're really excited at the FCC about this transition to 5G. Most consumers today are familiar with 3G and 4G wireless broadband service. Well, 5G is essentially the upgrade to our wireless networks that we need to see in order to enable a lot of the cutting-edge innovations that people are reading about and hearing about today, whether it's autonomous cars, the Internet of Things, virtual reality. We need to modernize and update our wireless networks to enable that, and that's really what 5G is about.
Yes, and so because I'm with the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, we always like to ask about how such services such as 5G wireless services will affect or benefit consumers.
There's going to be a lot of interesting benefits. On the first hand, you're going to see even more competition for your broadband dollar. So for instance, today, if you live in a location that only has one option for high-speed wireless service, 5G could introduce another competitor to you, so that could help drive down your prices, give you more options. The other issue that we're looking at is telehealth. There's a lot of interesting innovations taking place in that space that could benefit from the upgrade to 5G. For instance, a couple of months ago, I was on a trip in the Mississippi Delta, and we went to a rural healthcare clinic. We met a woman there named Miss Annie who had diabetes, and she wasn't seeing a lot of improvement using traditional treatment methods. So she was given a wireless-enabled blood glucose monitor and sent home with an iPad. And every day, given the wireless connectivity at her house, she would take her blood, and the iPad would show the number, and based on that, it would give her specific advice about what to do that day. And her numbers have improved, and Miss Annie says that she's never felt better. In order to take things like that to scale and get more people on the network doing those types of activities, we have to upgrade to 5G. So that's one example of where we're going to see 5G benefit consumers. And autonomous cars is another one. To some extent, we have to upgrade our wireless network to enable self-driving vehicles. Right now, we have about 39,000 deaths a year. And if we can move quickly to 5G, move quickly to autonomous cars, we can help really drive that number down.
Those are all really very beneficial benefits, so I look forward to learning more about that too in the near future. Well, then there's the issue of cost. We know right now that some consumers who have 3G or 4G services pay a certain amount of money. When 5G is available to them, will it cost them more?
When we look at this issue of broadband from the FCC's perspective, we keep 2 points in mind. First, you have to have access. There has to be broadband where you live. And second of all, it has to be affordable. And we take actions designed to address both those issues. 5G won't necessarily be more expensive for consumers. Part of that is when you think about the healthcare space, the autonomous self-driving car space, that's a lot of new revenue opportunities that carriers can pull from for the first time, so your traditional cellular customer isn't going to be footing the bill for this entire upgrade to 5G. The other piece of it is if we get the regulatory framework right, all of the new investment needed, which is estimated to be about $275 billion, that's going to happen without a penny in new taxes.
Wow, that is very interesting too. But then, of course, we always go back to many of your speeches and panel presentations. You've said that the United States needs to be 5G ready. What is the FCC doing to support the deployment of 5G?
Yeah, if you think back to that last transition that we had in technology from 3G to 4G, it was really transformative. Back at that transition, the largest companies in the US, the biggest drivers of our economy were big oil and big banks. And think about our lives today. technology companies over the last 10 years have come to have a tremendous influence on our lives and on our economy. And that's because the US won the race to 4G. So the entire smartphone app industry was able to develop and succeed in large part here in the US because we won that race to 4G. Whether it's, nowadays people can do everything on an app that we couldn't even imagine doing before, whether it's hailing a cab through an app, you can transfer money through Venmo and other apps. It's really transformed how we do our lives. We're going to see that same thing happen as we move to 5G as well.
And I'm looking forward to those challenges and for supporting the 5G deployment. Now, we're talking about some challenges. There are some. And as you have said, there's a lot of benefits too. But can you tell us a little bit more about challenges to deploying 5G, especially in rural areas or in underserved communities?
Yeah, the 5G network is going to look very different than the 4G network. So most consumers are familiar with the large 200-foot towers that have marked 3G and 4G deployments up till now. Well, what 5G is going to be about is layering on hundreds of thousands of new what we call small cells. So it's not going to be 200-foot towers, but we're going to need a lot more of them. Right now, for instance, we have about 300,000 cell sites in the country. We need to start building cell sites at a pace of about 60,000 new cell sites a year. So that's a regulatory challenge. How do we update and modernize our approach so we can facilitate the deployment of all these thousands of new small cells? This becomes really critical in rural America, less densely populated areas, where the business case is tough. Instead of having to build one tower to cover a small rural town, you might have to build 100 of them. And up until now, our regulatory structures assume that every new cell site is a 200-foot tower. So we had long and costly regulatory reviews, a lot of red tape. What we found is that regulatory cost was having a negative impact on where we're going to see these small cells deployed. So we've taken a series of actions at the FCC to update and modernize our approach, which the data show us is going to flip the business case for thousands of communities so that we do see 5G, not just in the biggest cities like New York or San Francisco, but in the thousands of other communities that are out there as well.
Yes, and as we're coming to the close of our interview, I have one more question for you. When can we expect the wired and wireless industries to roll out 5G services?
We're starting to see some of the leading edge deployments. I was in Indianapolis, Indiana a few weeks ago, and they're already putting up the small cells that are going to form the foundation for 5G. 2020, however, is a year that a lot of people are pointing to that we're going to see wider spread deployment of 5G. And there's a lot of communities right now that are starting to see initial 5G deployments that are starting out giving you more competition than you currently have for broadband, and it's only going to spread from there.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Consumer Connections. We look forward to our next interview with you. And all this information will be available on our website, www.fcc.gov. Thank you, and until next time.